Welcome back to day 2 of the North American LCS Expansion Tournament. I'm James Patterson, and we're coming to you live from the ESL studios here in Burbank, California. We just concluded our first best-of-5 series of the day and watched as Curse Academy 3-1'd their way in to the LCS. Now our next matchup is going to take place between Team Final 5 and Team Coast. I have here on stage with me Shorter Ace of Team Final 5 and Chris of Team Coast. So Shorter Ace, first question to you is, how does it feel being on a team that's comprised mainly of amateur players who haven't seen pro competition yet, and to be one of the top 4 challenger teams?
It feels really good because I used to watch competitive events all the time. I used to stay up late nights just to watch this stuff, and it feels really cool that I'm able to play at this level now.
Now, and Chris, for you, you're a name that we recognize. We've seen you around the challenger scene, the pro scene, and I have to ask here, not having those, having played on so many teams, what about Coast makes this journey special?
Playing on Coast has been really great, and everybody's hungry to win, so yeah.
I like it. No, hungry's good, man, and that's all we're looking for, wins. Back to you, Shorter Ace. Not having veterans on the team, though, I have to ask how you guys specifically tackle improving and getting better.
We usually just watch VODs of our old games to see what we can do better, what we did well. We watch OGN, really good teams that play, and see what they do and try to incorporate it to our play style.
Absolutely, I like that. Self-learning at its finest. Back to you, Chris. An interesting dynamic on Team Coast is that you have 3 players from the NA region and 2 now from the EU region. So how does this affect the team dynamic, and how has it helped you guys kind of mold into a unique team?
I think bringing in some players from other regions have given us a great edge, and we brought in some great players. Really great shot caller, and Pele has been doing a really great job at shot calling.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully that shot calling will pay off for you in this next matchup. Shorter Ace, final question before we load into this game. I want to know how you're feeling specifically in your matchup in the jungle, and then how you think the series will play out.
I think Impale is a really good jungle. I respect him a lot. I think it'll go to 5 games. I don't want it to go 5 games, but it'll probably go 5 games.
All right, well, 5 games, like I've said before, is definitely more exciting for us as viewers. And Chris, top lane matchup, how confident are you feeling, and how do you think the series is going to turn out?
I think I'll do really great at top lane against Rux, and I think we'll 3-0 them.
3-0, all right. That's a very bold prediction. Well, I like the confidence going in. Gentlemen, I'm sure you want to get your last-minute preparation in with your teams. So if you don't mind, I'll send you off to your player pods right now. Go for it. And now, before we load into that game, I do have to send it over to Riv and Jat to take us into the game today.
Thank you very much, Dash. Yeah, we're pulling a broadcaster swap here on the desk. I'm Riving DeBiz III, along with Joshua Jat Leesman. We're going to be bringing you an elimination match today. Yeah. It's not going to be good. 2 teams go through, 2 teams go home, and this is one of those go-home instances. It's been a 3-day tournament here so far. Best-of-5 matches all throughout, and it has just gone from fast games and some surrenders to long games now.
Yeah, and just a quick recap on our format. Obviously, there's 4 teams in this double elimination bracket,
right?
And this is our first elimination game. Only one of these teams can end up making it to the LCS, and they have to win 2 best-of-5s in a row. However, if they are eliminated, of course, they will be eligible and auto-qualified for next season's Challenger Series. So it's not all bad. Maybe that takes a little bit of pressure off, but it always is more pressuring in an elimination game, which is what these teams are facing right now.
And I say for Final 5, it's a go-for-broke moment. These guys had so many changes coming in here, kind of the underdog story, a team that was like, you know what, let's make a team and get ready for next Challenger season.
And they swapped around the players so many times. That's the story of their name, right? Final 5, F5, refresh. Because it actually works in a lot of different ways.
It does. It works well.
As long as they don't finish 5th.
And then they lock in a team, and they're like, oh, we could actually make it this time, so let's not get eliminated. I was talking to Shorter Ace a little earlier behind. One of the production guys was introducing me to him, and I could tell he was a little bit nervous. But to see what they had gone through, especially during their other games, is just kind of like taking a huge beating and then still being able to win those matches against Fusion. They went down quite hard. It's kind of like watching a Rocky. He's just getting hit, and then they came back, which actually brings me to Coast as well, who threw out a 20-minute surrender yesterday. When we see the gold leads and things in this game aren't really what they seem to be lately in terms of power and whatnot for teams. So we'll see if Coast can get that kind of lockdown and not want to say, let's get a surrender, let's get to next game mentality, because it hurt them.
Yeah, there's a lot of volatility in so many of these games. Even that last series we just saw that had Curse Academy qualifying into the LCS. That game 4 was absolutely crazy.
Yep.
I mean, you can see on the bracket here, Curse Academy obviously is the first team from this expansion tournament to make it into the LCS, and the games are really chaotic.
Yeah,
obviously,
teams doing it in fashion.
because they're still playing on the 420 patch, which is their first experience
That's
with
true.
what the 2015 season is going to bring, but also because it is essentially challenger teams playing each other. They don't have the same level of polish and ability to close games in a decisive manner, that the games get really, really crazy, which is why this weekend's been so amazing to watch.
It's true. We watch these games, and you remember all these 4 teams qualified on 419. So they had a bit of time, obviously, to play on this. Some maybe getting their hands on PBE, which changes may not even have come to fruition now on live. And we see them. They do a lot of fights, and then it seems like they're waiting for their power spikes to still come off a dragon they would take, which doesn't really give you gold
It's so
anymore.
different.
It gives you stat gold. So you see the teams are like, dragon, and then we'll farm because we get a spike, and then they find themselves kind of wandering about because they only took their jungle, and they're just getting ready for another fight. It was kind of like what Fusion did yesterday. It was 41 to 20 something, but they didn't win the game because they weren't pushing. Teams are kind of just waiting for these spikes that aren't happening unless they're getting them themselves, unless they're pushing turrets.
Yeah.
We see a lot of the AP teams too, so it's not like they're crushing turrets down immediately.
And the most interesting thing I see about all this is this Coast team, who in the previous rounds of this expansion tournament looked absolutely unstoppable.
That's true.
You're seeing the comments, everyone was saying
Yep.
that, oh, Coast is the only team that looks LCS ready, or they're just kind of on another level. Fusion was actually the other team. I'd say they were the favorites coming into this tournament.
So true.
Obviously, the winner of this match will end up playing Fusion tomorrow for that
Right.
final LCS spot. But I really want to see if Coast can make it back into their 419 patch form. Obviously, the game has changed a fair bit, but they have a lot of experienced players. I mean, they actually have someone who has just been to Worlds
yeah.
in Jesses, and now he's playing in an expansion tournament. So from a nerve perspective,
Right.
you would expect that he'd have a lower amount of nerves. But at the same time, you factor in he's moved to another country now.
Right.
If he doesn't succeed here, then what was it really for? And that actually does add a little bit of pressure there.
Yeah, coming from the European LCS, didn't have the greatest stats at Worlds, obviously having to switch up in the team as they went into it, but he was 3rd in the summer split in KDA, 4th in gold per minute from that mid lane. So still a good guy to have on the team. They're definitely going to be able to use him to go strong in this one. Bans against him, the Ahri was seeing quite a bit, and it hurt him out. His Ziggs wasn't that impressive to come out yesterday in his play.
Yeah, he's a bit of a strange mid laner, doesn't necessarily play the meta champions, but
Right.
instead will play his own style. Obviously, at the bottom of this Team Coast lineup, Mash and Sheep, which are the 2 most standard players on that roster. They're
Yep.
the ones who
Yep.
have been there for the longest at this point.
Interesting to see pretty much LCS from top to bottom on that team. Final 5 now on your screen. We can see Rux here. He's been putting up some numbers in the top lane. Had a great game on Aurelia yesterday. They did turn back to that Aurelia with a different composition and didn't work out as well. Maybe he'll give us some Scion play. It's been fun to see as well this weekend.
That would be pretty awesome if we get to see him play the sign. I also really want to see how Rux and the rest of Final 5 bounce back. Being up 2-0 against Fusion yesterday,
Yeah.
and then getting beat 3 games in a row. I mean, we talked about coming up off the ground after you get knocked down,
Yeah.
which they did in game 1. Well, when you get knocked down 3 games in a row, how much harder is it to get up in your next series? Obviously, Shorter Ace needs to get rid of some of his nerve problems. You'd think
Right.
he would be a little more solid. He played Lee Sin 6 games in a row if you actually go all the way back to the earlier rounds before finally switching up to Zac and still not finding success. Obviously, if he finds confidence in his Lee Sin, I think it will be a pick that works on this patch, but he's really just got to pick it up.
It's one of those things that he obviously enjoys. It's that comfort wheelhouse pick, but he also says when he gets it, it's that pressure to perform, and it's something he hasn't felt too much yet. He said he'd be able to fit into a little bit better today, having felt that already.
I hope he can. I also want to talk about their bottom lane, Prototype, White, and Rule
Yeah.
18. Vayne was banned every single game against Prototype, and there are also multiple
reason.
lane swaps against his Jinx, which actually kind of makes you question, how strong is this lane really? Because on paper, you look at their solo curating, they're both Diamond 1 players. They're not the Master Challenger tier players we're used to seeing
That's true.
in the LCS. However, how much do they care about their solo curating? Considering the Vayne was getting banned away, and considering he actually did have some good games on Jinx, is that an actual edge they could have against this Coast team? Match and Sheep didn't necessarily perform amazingly in the earlier round, and depending if Vayne is banned or not, maybe we'll get to see some of that prototypical play from Prototype White on Vayne.
It'd be amazing to see him on Vayne. As we'd heard Zyrene say, it's 1,468 games, and I checked it the other night, and he hasn't put another one on there. So it still sits at that number.
It's banned all the time.
Because it's banned, and it's, yeah, just more so to his right to play the other champions. We did see him on some Caitlyn. He's been putting up a lot of numbers. We'll have to see as well. We move to the mid lane a little bit. What Gate puts up. We have Impaler on your screen right now. And these guys have just been able to pretty much do a lot around Gate. He obviously has used Gates. He's used the little Jace Gates as well. And he's somebody on the team that can really make plays. But there's not one person on Coast that's going to get up and carry that. I think they all need to get together to really make it happen for the team. Like a Mac Noon or like a Huhi we've seen really coming out strong in a LeBlanc or Zed play.
I know it's completely off topic, but that last game between Curse Academy and Fusion was so crazy. Just Huhi Zed was ridiculous. That one fight where he dodged pretty much everyone and ended up winning. Then he dies to a Nexus turret at the end, and they end up losing control of the game. Zed, as well, might be a pick in this series. The interesting thing is Jez's, who's on our screen right now on the bottom left, is not a Zed player. So
right, you said, right, like outside the meta.
Whereas Gate has pulled it out in the past and done pretty well on it. He's found some success. It's not one of his like super OP picks, but it's something he can definitely play, especially if they want to try and make a little bit of chaos in this game. A split pushing Zed, especially in these expansion tournament games where teams aren't necessarily as coordinated, collapsing properly, engaging at the right times, can be a very potent champion choice. I want to see if Gate ends up going with that actually more than anything else.
I'm really interested to see, as you mentioned that in split pushing and opportunities, what teams start to do with Baron when they have that. How many people or how many teams are going to start doing a huge 1-3-1, have super buffed minions in every lane when you have that option. And if you're that far ahead, usually you're carrying the dragon buffs to go along with it. Seeing Sheep on your screen, he actually had a pretty crazy Blitzcrank game the other day to come in. That was great to see. He was really helping out to initiate the team. Then they'd lock that up into something that else could lock down mid lane, like Jez's Ahri with the charm. They were really able to set a good combination up with what they brought to the table. Hopefully Jez's can bring out those kills. Him being down on the team, I think, kind of affects the entire team. It makes it hard because once he gets going on one of his champions, he is able to carry the game.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. These teams completely backs against the wall. Kobe was talking about it yesterday, actually. Everyone always talks about how Final Five exceeds expectations. But at some point, they're just underestimated, because if they consistently perform well again and again, hey, maybe this team is actually pretty good. And they've set their own bar quite low so that they can exceed it. Like we said earlier, they were thinking, we've already made it into next season's Challenger Series. That was our goal when we formed anyway.
Right.
And at this point, they're playing a little bit with house money, which can really unlock you to play better, especially when nerves can be such a big deal.
It's always good to play with house money. You get a big chunk of it, you throw it down. You don't have to worry about anything, and that's how they should play. Go for broke in these matches. It's obviously a best of 5 coming in here, as we've had for each matchup. So that means they can show something that, you know, could really throw Coast off, and Coast can do the same thing. We saw what St. Vicious did with that Karthus. It did draw a ban the next game, which freed up more for them. That's one of the mind games you can play in these best of 5 series.
Wow.
Shorter Ace did say he has a trick up his sleeve, both in gameplay and champion pick here as we're into ban.
I should hope so, because they're banning all the junglers as of now.
Well, that's another thing, is when Shorter Ace is hit, and this even happened in their matches versus Zenith on their way to get here, was he was hit up in the beginning by a Lee Sin and a Jarvan. Lee Sin now banned, and it's like they couldn't come back. So it seems like if Shorter Ace is really knocked down in the beginning, the whole team has a hard time controlling their lanes altogether. So for the jungle to be hit might push them onto something like Zac again, and that's also what hurt.
I really wonder if Coast ends up banning Warwick here, because with a lot of the big-time junglers banned, Jarvan, Pantheon, and Lee Sin have been pretty much the 3 most common junglers that we have seen. Warwick ends up being banned frequently for the numerous reasons I'm sure the dedicated viewers have heard so many times, but he basically just one-shots you when he presses R and smites you at the right time on this 420 patch. And if they don't pick it, it's theoretically up for Impaler, but we saw Cloud9 do a lot of this at IEM San Jose, where they would leave the Warwick up and then just starve him of farm and very heavily respect the ultimate. So it is, as we saw, at a high competitive level, able to play against. And they end up just going for the Vayne. Prototype really wants it over even a Warwick.
Now what happens if he does not perform on that? So like we said before, once you get your champion, the pressure's on. And like we said, Prototype with 1,400 plus games on that vein. Positive record to boot as well. So with that locked in, now Coast kind of has freedom to pick whatever. They know they can't go too far in the late game. It's going to be pretty painful. Prototype's going to clear everything up janitorial style. So Chris, with his first pick, do you see that Maokai is still left up? A few things for the top lane. I decided to just get something in the jungle here since that's getting pretty cut down right now.
Yeah, this is a very confusing pick and ban phase.
Boom.
Maokai and Warwick, two incredibly powerful tanks that may be able to just jump right on top of Vayne and take him down. Like, I really need to see how Prototype's Vayne works out here, because we know that Prototype White and Rule 18 do the majority of the shot calling for this team, with Shorter Ace pitching in every once in a while. And I wonder if this is a case of the in-game leader of the team almost overpowering good logic. I don't think Vayne is a good first pick from a strategic point of view. I think the short-range AD carry, knowing you can pick it against literally any lane, not pairing it with supports, not paying attention to the other team's mid lane choices, are all short-sighted things just because he really wants to play Vayne.
Right.
We'll see if it ends up paying off for him. Like, if his Vayne is literally the best in the world and you need to take it away from him, then go for it, man.
Well, he
but
is the
it looks
guy.
a little dangerous.
He is the guy that takes exhaust on his AD carry, right? And once that's picked, you pretty much pigeonhole yourself into saying, we need to be able to peel for this guy as well. So they're already picking the lockdown. They do have that peel, the shield, the monsoon. They can get some ice balls on from Shorter Ace here, who's going to be on Nunu.
I like it.
Interesting pickup for him. We've seen a few Nunus in the past few days.
I like how they're building the team around Vayne right now, especially with so many junglers banned. And if they need to keep Warwick down on farm, the Nunu is the perfect choice to do so. Warwick is slow farmer. Nunu punishes slow farmers pretty much more than anyone else. Not to mention the team fight peel of Nunu plus Janna can work very well in synergy with Vayne. So they're coming together pretty well with that first pick Vayne in building the rest of the team composition around it.
We'll see what else is in store. Could be that Ezreal coming in. It looks like Mashmi does want that. We've seen the blue Ezreal coming in from that AD carry position as well as the mid lane. I don't know if we're going to see Jez's pick that up just yet, though. Sheep is going to take the Thresh, is going to continuously be able to make plays with that, or at least help Impaler to get out of a sticky situation with the Dark Passage. So far, a pretty good team from Coast. It is kind of shutting down what Vayne would want to do here. You can get damage onto that back line with True Shot Barrage if you hit it. But other than that, they're going deep right now to get to him. And there's the Scion coming in from Rux. Also, Gate brings out the Azir again. This will be play number 2 for him. Really like that pickup.
Yeah, I think we're just going to be seeing more and more Azir as teams get more familiar with the Champions kit. This entire Final 5 team composition is pretty cool to look at. Tons and tons of peel for Prototype, as well as us getting to see Rux's Scion, which we were talking about in the pregame. We really wanted to see him pull that out. Tank versus tank at the top lane, and of course a double AD comp for Coast, which is exciting in its own right.
So I guess if you're going to say you need a little bit of peel for that Vayne, you got it in a lot of positions. He can stay on the back line, but now we have Jez's on the Ezreal, bringing out something a little different there, and we kind of saw him on the screen. He did a little fist pump yes chant to himself as he saw that lock-in of the Azir and everything else. So maybe he's thinking, I know what I'm doing. This Ezreal versus Azir is going to be my matchup.
I actually think it's a pretty bad matchup for Azir and a pretty favorable matchup for Ezreal. They baited out that double AD a fair bit. I think we're seeing more and more of it just based on the way, obviously we'll have to see it play out in game, but based on the way that Azir needs to place his soldiers and then has very definite cooldowns on how he can move them around, I think there is a lot of outplay potential from Jez's Ezreal in order to shut down Azir.
All right, we're about to get into game. Both of these teams coming out of the Range 5 qualifiers. Coast actually having to do that as well since they put those new members on the team, so they just decided to go ahead and do it again. Easy peasy for them. But no, they were able to come out strong, and we will see what they have in store for us here. The best of 5 for elimination. Who will go on to face Fusion, and who's going to be actually going home and trying to requalify back in the Challenger Series as it comes up next time. It's going to be tough in this game. Best of 5, it's all on the line for Fusion, or rather for Final 5 and for Coast.
Yeah, I really want to see this get in the game. Double AD composition versus the Protect the Vayne, which was first picked, which I'm sure has Twitter all a Twitter.
It does. Twitter all a Twitter. If you have to, or if you want to make any statements, make sure you head out to Twitter, #LCS Expansion. Hit us up on that, LOL Esports. And we're going to be checking everything as we get back. Guys, we are into game. Let's hear it for the players. We are going to see a little bit of Warwick play out of the jungle from Coast, the Nunu play from Shorter Ace. We'll keep eyes on that. We'll keep eyes on everything else as well. I'm excited to see what Jesus has here with the Ezreal in the mid lane versus Gates Azir, because he was really able to put up a lot of trouble with that, and F5 was all over the turrets as fast as they could be, because Azir, he's pretty good at taking those down from long range. They were able to use that ability.
Yeah, just the defensive line coming at the start of the game as well. Doesn't look like we're seeing any early lane swaps, which will make, in my opinion, the bottom lane really fascinating to watch. Just because they first picked the Vayne, how potent is this Vayne Janna going to be? If that's a sign of things to come, pretty good. Yeah. But I think that's more about just Mash getting a little bit cheeky with his ward positioning and player positioning.
Well, if I was on a champion that I played all the time, I'd probably try to go aggressive right in the beginning as well. That's just going to be a simple back for Mash, but Prototype has kind of put it in his head now. Says, Mash, I mean, we're going to go hard in this lane. Once I get that Storm Shield, things are not going to be happy for you. See what the roam gets in from Jez's in the mid lane as this game starts off. Like you said, Shorter Ace hopefully going to be in the face of Impaler here. He'll get a little bit of help, obviously, on both sides. Chris is helping with the Gromps, or Krugs rather. And then they'll be helping the Gromp on the other side.
Yeah, jungle pathing is going to be really important right here, and specifically how Shorter Ace can impact the lanes versus how Impaler can impact them. Some really smart movement there by Sheep. Rather risky, actually, because there could have been a Nunu there and he could have walked into his doom, but he stopped them from taking the big Krug, which will eliminate the early level 2 that Rule 18 and Prototype were going for down there.
So looking at Shorter Ace as a Nunu, now does he do more damage to Warwick if he goes and buffs up, snowballs his lanes, or if he can get into the jungle and deny Warwick his farm?
Well, that's going to be entirely on what Shorter A's game plan is and how risky he wants to become. I don't actually think that the super early Nunu counter jungling is that good, because he really needs some points in to consume before he can safely go in there. Nunu's first clear is generally pretty safe, much like Warwick, and we're going to see the counter jungling a little bit later. All fighting in that bottom lane. Summoner
spell blown as well. The exhaust not used there in the trade. Coast wasn't in range for the turret, but Shorter Ace, as his top jungle is clear, will make sure to keep an eye on that bottom as big harass onto Rule 18 there. Always picking the Janna. Really loves that champion, and he's played it pretty much all throughout these games. Every time that he can get it, they've even first picked it in a few.
And I would say his reputation on Janna leaves a little bit to be desired. Yeah. He's the guy who's starting to get that reputation of always face checking, always getting caught, which is really dangerous against a Thresh. He needs to be very careful with his positioning here, because he needs to keep himself alive, since they have built this composition around Vayne, and Janna needs to keep Vayne alive.
Did get himself into some sticky situations. Kind of come up on social media that they said Rule 18 was that you'll die at some point. Because he did face check a few times, but he's kept himself alive throughout the past games, and he definitely provides huge support for Prototype. They work so well together, and definitely no other support to be with him. Jess is taking harass from the hits up. Q level up for Gate, so he's going to keep doing that from long range. Jess is at 22 to 19, so he's not doing too bad on the CS there. Like we said, he was excited to get that matchup on screen. We'll see now, excited for the gank. Shorter Ace in the bottom lane gets that slowdown, and it's going to be denied, actually. Well, Sheep forced a flash. I thought that hit Mash, but it actually blasted Sheep, and he was slowed down. Mash's spell shield not doing too much there.
Yeah, if Prototype really wanted to get aggressive, he could have flashed for that one. He may have ended up trading kills back, but I think he could have secured the kill. He chose not to, because honestly, since they burned Sheep's flash now, they can get that kill whenever they want. Nunu would just have to flash Snowball coming in through the lane, and they're going to be able to repeat that kill, which basically, if Sheep respects that, will basically have to just give the lane back to Final 5. He can't get farther up, which would leave Mash alone, which allows Prototype to free farm. It all depends on whether or not he's willing to take the risk of still playing in a forward position on Thresh. That is a very critical flash burn.
It just keeps getting more difficult. Prototype is really putting down his aggression in that bottom lane. Shorter Ace offering a bit of help there, as we saw. Jess is not having too much fun in mid in the HP zone. Looks like Gates kind of just here with half auto attacks. Knows he has the upper hand. He's going to try to get this wave to crash into the turret. 5 to 4 as he's denying Mystic shots to the CS, so he's really giving him some trouble here.
I want to see how this lane continued to progress. Obviously, Jez's took a lot of harass early on, but with this massive wave that just arrived at the turret, if we are to sum the CS, Jez's is winning by a very small amount. And based on the early harass and control that Azir, in my opinion, can have in the lane, it's actually not going that poorly for Jesses. I think that lane will end up being turned pretty much by jungle ganks, just since Ezreal is very non-committal in lane. If he wants to be. As long as he's farming, he's doing okay.
Stay super safe. Once you get that Frost or Iceborne Gauntlet, you just slow people down for the engage from Maokai and
Well, it depends
Warwick.
if he decides to go that way. I've actually seen a lot of Ezreals, just do that tier into a Trinity Force.
All right.
It started happening in OGN, and it's been happening very frequently here as well. That can go either for the Iceborne build, or he could just end up going Muramana and a Trinity Force.
Shorter Ace making his way in. Does have that Raptor smite. Looks like he doesn't get too much for himself. And he's going to be making his way out. Easy peasy. Nice little invade there. Making it safe. He's not going to find Impaler, who actually just walks in the same spot now. They could be meeting each other here in the bottom lane as we see a bit of a rotation towards the bottom. It looks like it's just going to be a quick ward towards Dragon, Impaler, and Sheep all hover. They just make sure that Nunu wasn't trying to get an early Dragon off.
You can see Final 5 wants to make something happen here. Despite having the flash burned on Sheep, I do have to commend Mash on Sivir here, keeping the CS even, if not in his favor. 50 to 44, not to mention the Targon stacks that Sheep has managed to execute, giving them a slight goal lead in that lane.
Has been playing it well. Forced to be pretty much low on mana here the entire time. He doesn't have too much that he's going to be spell shielding, and Rule 18 doesn't want to deliver that mana back to him. So they're doing a great job at making sure he's having a hard time farming. Still 3 CS up now. Sheep doesn't want anything, like you said earlier, staying on the front line is too much damage. And bouncing blades, bouncing boomerang. What's it called now? Ricochet. There you go.
Yeah, sorry, man.
All these changes. No. Don't be sorry, Chad. 7.5 minutes in, still safety in the bottom lane. I figured Sheep would have gone down since the flash was there. We got about a minute left onto that. No pressure from Shorter Ace after the first gank. He's just letting everything be safe. And he's not really giving Impaler too much trouble, so he's going to be safe to 6 as well from Warwick.
It does seem like a little bit of a missed opportunity so far from Shorter Ace. If I look at his skill order, he is splitting hairs between Consume and Ice Blast, so he's not exactly the full counter jungle Nunu, but 2 points in each. Still just farming up. I mean, I think he's probably just waiting until he gets an early Sightstone, and then he can really start trying to exert some pressure, because unless... So he did counter jungle and Impaler early on. Warwick got to 6 just fine. Final 5's lanes weren't necessarily aggressive enough to punish having a Warwick jungle. So unless he can get a Sightstone out and very heavily track the movements of Warwick while not dying to the super potent Warwick ultimate, then the Nunu pick has so far been a failure. There's also a chance that it will work in team fights because of the exceptional peel it would add on top of the Janna to protect the Vayne and give him the Blood Boil and the objective control. That's basically all he has left to become successful, because Impaler got to his Devour and Smite, Skirmisher, Saber enchantment
he's already
really
up.
early.
8:50, so just about 9 minutes in the game there for him. He is level 6, and he's ready to get that ultimate out now. Let's see what is happening on the other side. Shorter Ace does have that, but he probably won't be in the same spot as this first ultimate activation. Looks like that might be bottom lane. Go ahead, getting the Gromp over to Impaler, and they're going to head to the bottom lane. Power in 3s here, and they might just get a nice Lantern toss into that Infinite Duress.
So Janna is pretty good at disrupting a Warwick.
That's true.
He'll still get the damage off from the ultimate, but they can peel him very well after the fight. So a lot of caution needs to be exercised in these lanes now that Warwick is level 6, 7 actually, with the ultimate up.
Teleports are up for the top lane as well. Rux has a nice push on the lane. It'd be an advantage for him if there were a fight down here. Chris and him are both level 8.
That's
there's
a great
the hook
hook
on. Not seeing any teleports just yet. The Monsoon goes out. Shorter Ace trying to make his way in. A nice absolute 0. And it looks like Prototype is forced to the brush. He will be able to take down Impaler. A few more Silver Bolts picking that kill up. We've already seen the one go down. And that was going to be Rule 18 first. Nice play back and forth, 1 for 1.
Really interesting right there. They ended up blowing the Janna ultimate on the Lantern, and the Pillar flash ulted back in. Gate, though, trying to take advantage of all the action bottom lane.
Ooh, going in very hard. Takes down mid-turret.
No.
Whoa, Prototype getting caught out there. A little antsy in the pantsy. Gets teleported on by Chris, and they're able to take that kill very easily. So they get a little bit of gold off of what he just got for himself. Heads back, buys that BF sword and a pickaxe. So he'll come back to lane a lot stronger than Mash, but Mash may still be able to poke out with that boomerang if he can hit the right shots.
Yeah, I would say total greed there by Prototype.
Absolutely.
Because they knew he had teleported down to the bottom lane previously, but the action will continue. Shorter Ace, he just wants to kill Mash.
Oh, Mash definitely going down. Walks right into the turret. That red buff's actually going to go over to Rule, so it'll make the bottom lane a little bit more of a pain in the butt for Mash and Sheep. And it looks like Final 5 is starting to take control of the map quite a bit here. True Shot Barrage to give the middle lane some breathing room. They just go ahead and set up the Azir turret. Gate gets out of there alive. It looks like they may start to set up this dragon a little bit low, but looks like they have the time to do it anyway.
Yeah, I have to say Gate's presence in the mid lane on Azir has been absolutely exceptional.
Yeah.
I thought Jesses would be able to poke him down and farm
yeah.
just fine, which I think his farm has been all right, but he just hasn't been able to deal with the endless shoving of the lane, and losing that turret early is a pretty big deal since it also cascaded into that dragon since they just had no map pressure. Good job by Final 5.
Definitely pulling out the stops here to begin the game. Morello Namicon finished up from Gate as the pushing helped in mid lane. 102 to 92 there. Chris going to do what he can to start putting some damage on this top. His teleport's down, so he'll be hanging out with his roots in the top lane for quite a while. All that hasn't changed the gold too much, but those stats of attack do go over to Final 5 now, so we'll see if they try to use anything with that advantage. One turret down on each side. That was just Azir's going down in mid. There's on the hunt in the bottom lane. Very nice disengage. They can't get anything. That was infinite duress that was about to be used. Every minute they want to get down there and keep it going.
Yeah, that's basically Coast's plan. You first pick the Vayne. We're going to use Warwick pretty much every gank down in the bottom lane. They don't care about killing a Scion with a Maokai. Those guys are just going to slap each other basically the whole game until they decide for later team fights. But very impressive peeling there by Rule 18. Able to stop the Lantern on the hunt gank without using Monsoon is impressive in itself.
Ruck's trying to get some swings in onto Chris once he gets him stunned up. Looks like that lane's going pretty much in his favor. Chris rather doing a great job of keeping his CS up though. Doesn't have too much to push Scion out of lane, but him himself trying to heal up just off of the abilities in his passive. And he's done a great job. Both teleports are blown, so we won't see any action from those guys in the top lane anytime soon, but it looks like they're trying to create their own with that teleport being down. A good move. I like it. Could have been a twisted advance, but they play it safe here, and they're actually going to wait to get that infinite rest down the way they want it.
Yeah, Rux's spidey sense was tingling there, though. When Chris so freely attacked that ward, despite being lower in health and would lose a 1v1 all in, you'd think Rux would be able to see him, but then he just forgets about it and the penalty goes in.
He's like, that wasn't safe, but I'll keep going in. Rux gets himself out on that one. The ultimate is down. He used it to kind of pop up the fight there, so it's not his escape on this one. Can't use it. Emperor's Divide not up. No, it is actually up, but Gate decides not to use the ultimate, and he just puts a little extra damage down. So you can see now, Final 5, the pressure around the map is theirs first every time.
Yeah, Gate would have had to get very dangerous positions in order to use that Emperor's Divide, and the kill would not have been guaranteed since Rux was so low. But at the same time, they end up getting pressure out of that. Rux, with his stubbornness in that lane, was able to withstand yet another Warwick gank. That's kind of, I'd say, 1 for 2 for Impaler, since he did get a kill on the gank in the bottom lane. But it's very important to track the efficiency of those Warwick ganks to see if he will be useful late game.
Just missing over the shoulder of Prototype. That's what they wanted. Howling Gale just missing the backside of Sheep. He gets himself out alive. And it looks like both use the ultimates. On the Hunt was also used by Mashme. He's about the same amount of mana here as Prototype, so they can't really deliver too much damage as this fight continues. And they're just going to farm it out. Blue buff going over to Gate. He's been doing well in mid lane, and this whole weekend, I like these games because a lot of the lanes are even in CS, and it's so hard to find really where the power of who's winning is coming from, and it's the small things. It's been, like you said, Gate in mid lane. Yeah. Good moves by Shorter Ace to help out Prototype in the bottom lane, which Coast has been reacting to and also taking, so quite even.
And in the 3 best-of-5s we've seen this week, we have yet to see a 3-0. Obviously, these teams that have made it here are fairly close in skill, and in this game itself, they're very close in items. I'm actually very curious about Prototype's choice of items here. It looks like he's going Infinity Edge first on Vayne, which is very uncommon for most Vayne players. You'd see a Blade of the Ruin King early on, but if I had to guess, he's counting on the Blood Boil of Nunu to amp his attack speed and therefore try and multiply his Infinity Edge damage a little bit sooner. But since he's getting the attack damage from Janna anyway, I'm a little bit surprised. But he's going for a more crit-focused build since he will be getting more base attack damage from Janna and he's actually relying less on the silver bolts than most Vaynes would, and more just on his mobility, temporary invisibility, and large crits.
Right, because you look over at Shorter Ace, and he's got 4 into the Ice Blast, 5 rather now, and 2 in Consume, so he's looking at Blood Boil Lath. So if the synergy is there, he'll be there a little later. Not as of right now, but he's farming his face off in his environment. Very Double Lift-esque right now, all by himself.
Luckily, even point 1 in Blood Boil gives 25% attack speed and 8% move speed, so it's not to be ignored. But yeah, I absolutely agree. It's not going to kick in until much later. We'll see if there's a little bit of a fight here, though.
See what kicks in right now. Chris coming in, puts on Vengeful Maelstrom immediately. Infinite Duress was already used, so the crowd control really isn't there. They're still able to chase down the kills. Prototype right in the middle of an entire fight. Rock's trying to be the big guy for any skill shots here, and he is able to get out alive. They are not able to turn the fight, however. Too many members of Coast and too healthy.
But Shorter Ace caught really out of position right here. Coast trying to push something out, but they're just getting hit by those soldiers again and again.
They got 1 minute coming up onto the Dragon, so grabbing this position will be good, at least with wards, and they will be able to come back. Summoner spells pretty much blown right now just on Rule 18 and Sheep, so everybody else, they can do some good damage and easily get themselves in a pretty tricky situation with that escape to be had. 17 minutes on the clock, very low in kills from what we've been seeing from a lot of the teams, and it looks like there's a lot of respect being paid here as these fights come up too. Teams aren't just diving in one after the other trying to get revenge kills for each other. They might lose one, and they're playing it smart this time. Seen a lot this weekend where teams just kind of fall into the trap of a fight.
I think the bloodbath could still be coming. There's a strange little mid-game that's been happening,
This is true.
specifically after the first Dragon, and because Baron isn't up until 20 minutes, teams are a little bit lost as to what to do sometimes, and we end up just seeing them farming a whole bunch, and then they get a whole bunch of action to do. Dragon number 2, though, looks like it's going to Final 5. Let's see if Coast can stop this one, but walking through a choke point against Azir is nearly impossible, in my opinion.
Very scary stuff. Throws up that Emperor's Divide. The team can also get a bit of movement speed if they cross through it. The damage now to Chris, but Ruck's also taking the same as the top laners go back and forth. It is going to be Rux that falls as his pass. They're trying to do more. A snipe on the backside. Prototype will be offering no more DPS to this fight. Jess is taking a little bit of damage and aggro from his Arcane Shift, but they're going to be able to get out safe without that Dragon damage on them. And a very nice fight once again. 2 for none here. Jess is pulling out some shots.
Yeah, I really feel like that was a lack of coordination by Final 5. They have the Nunu.
Right.
They have the control and the choke point to damage Coast if they are going to jump through. I feel like they should have stayed on the Dragon, finished it, allowed Azir to zone, and then fight afterwards, because what they ended up doing worked out terribly for them. They took a bunch of damage from the Dragon. They half peeled off. They pushed up far enough that Impaler was going to be in infinite duress range. He got that off. They jumped around the Emperor's Divide because of their sneaky mobility, and they took everything. They got a nice fight, and now they can still get the Dragon afterwards.
Definitely an easy fight to
Flash
see,
steal.
if you will. There it is. He's going to chomp down the steal from Shorter Ace, but can he get out? We just saw him go down, so this is a valiant attempt by him to pretty much make up for that as he comes back from spawn. He does so, gets his team the Dragon, and it means a lot more now in 420.
Wow. So a very interesting exchange of events. Yeah, exactly. 2 Dragons, but a team that is behind in goal.
That's right.
We have to keep in mind now, since we are on the 420 patch, they have increased minion damage now, as well as the attack damage and ability power. So gold-wise, they're actually very even, which will make future Dragon contests very even as far as relative power of the teams.
That's one thing that's just we were talking about is really where's the power coming from, and sometimes you'll just see it come from that one guy who did well in his lane because they got those 2 Dragons and the team has been controlling. It's very hard to see power right now. Coast just found a little bit of their own, taking down Final 5 and 2 kills there. Rux 0-1-0, so he can still stay top, do good for himself. Actually he's going to be 0-2-0 in just a second. He might have to. He's still pointed at the wall, and he's going to be popped immediately, but the Infinite Duress goes off. They're going to get a quick kill here. What is the team doing now? They're going to chase up to the top lane. Actually, Rux stays alive, and they don't push the mid lane. They don't push bottom. They do have Prototype getting a little bit of wave pressure down, but it's all about the skirmish right now coming in for Ghost.
Scion is so hard to kill. He is really, really just a monstrous tank, and especially against this team. He's going to be building so much damn armor. Since it is a double AD composition, and it's not one of the quirky double ADs that actually does magic damage. They're just all physical damage, and it's not like Maokai packs that big of a punch. it will be very hard for Coast to get through the front line of Final 5. Not only do they have the Rux and the Nunu that will be able to stack armor, they also have the Azir Soldiers and the Emperor's Divide. So that last fight we saw was Coast getting to the back line.
Ooh.
And Prototype, he's going for it.
Oh, that's called a 1v1. Prototype takes Jezzus to school real quick in the AD carry fashion, but Vayne versus an Ezreal, you're not long for this world. Is Ezreal. He got a good few shots off, but he could not get himself to live. They're going to probably get this bottom turret off this as well.
Yeah, especially not when Vayne starts point blank on you. I think Ezreal would have a chance with the Iceborne if he could start the fight while seeing Vayne, but when he gets snuck up, sneaked up on,
Sneak a snoop.
sneakered up on, just like that, it's not going to work out very well.
They can't get too much pressure on this lane. Coast rotating a bit and adapting to what needs to happen right now, but not getting the kills they want when they rotate. They're only coming at the dragon fights right now, and then they're just kind of forced to back spend their gold, which isn't bad, but that's where we see the games kind of stall out and nobody's grabbing too much. Rux here trying to do and cause some trouble top lane. The clear from True Shot Barrage only gives him a few minions to work with, and he's gone already anyways. Deep wards trying to be cleared out now. We actually haven't seen too much of the ward game coming into play here because they've all been fighting in the middle of the lanes or at these dragons. So we'll see if Shorter Ace can get that Nunu, get some pink wards in. Well, he has Nunu. We'll see if he can get pink wards in and start creating opportunities.
Prototype's build is really interesting to me. Blood Boil is now at 2 points from Nunu, so it's giving him 30% attack speed. But it looks like he's going to be going Infinity Edge Bloodthirster or potentially a Mercurial Scimitar as a second item for the QSS. But just a Vayne that avoids attack speed and lifesteal for this long is just not very common to see. However, he first picked it, and because they are running it with the Nunu and Janna, he's still going to be hitting for a ton of damage. It's just a really unconventional build.
Can't question 1,400 games. When do you think he figured it out? Be like, I shouldn't buy attack speed at game
Only if I
1300.
play in this specific situation when I'm against these champions.
I'll build Vayne completely different and win the game. 2-2-0. He's got the kills on his team right now. One is also gone to Rule 18. There's the Infinite Duress. It's on to Gate, though. The True Shot Barrage coming in from Jez is able to start and get this fight in favor of Coast. Very nice flayback from Sheep. He's going low as the box is down. Rux very hard to kill, and here it comes. It's going to be the final hour from Prototype. A few shots on. Chris does not go down. Now he's onto him once again, but he stays alive somehow. Must have come from a summoner heal. Actually just got a good shield for himself. And they're able to make it out safely now, dropping Gate. Jez is back and forth with that Iceborne. He's going to be able to go forever on this one. He's pretty much just smiling at Final 5, chasing him right now. The rest of the team, well, I just say Mash is on the other side. Yeah. He's saying, if you need an out, I'm right here. We could get this mid turret some damage, but it looks like he's just going to cause some trouble. So it looks like it is going to be Jez is getting out.
What moves there by Jez is having the Merman upgrade and a blue buff made his Mystic Shot so threatening, as well as slowing when he was trying to run away there. And that fight just went all wrong for Final 5. We talked about their front line earlier, and let's actually talk about it from Coast's point of view, because what they need to do, they need to be able to bypass the front line, which they did right here. Gate was right next to Shorter Ace and Rux, defeating the purpose of the front line. They immediately went for the squishy target. They killed him immediately. These guys are no threat when there's no damage backing them up, so they have to then wait for Prototype to come in. And a very critical thing happened here. Prototype wasted his first attack on a minion. He could have used that attack for Sheep and then maybe been able to take another kill, or even on Maokai, and they could have at least got one back. But then they weren't able to do that. We saw the aftermath of Jess's kiting away, and the kiting took so long. Impaler has his ultimate yet again with the dragon up in 10 seconds. This is the dragon Coast needs to get.
Now it becomes intense for Final 5 to really close that gap if they even want to engage. Somehow Coast is just going to have to start face checking if Final 5 is looking to get the fights that they want. Jez is easily able to stay on the outside with that Iceborne now and just keep hitting it.
What a start.
Now they get into it. This is exactly what they needed. They take down Jez immediately with all of his summoners. Chris is locked up. The box holds Prototype in place for a second. Infinite Duress, the instant turn, the instant takedown as Prototype tunnels in a bit to the kill and gets found on a ward above the Dragon Brush. But at Final 5 still coming out big on that fight, even though they lost the AD carry. They're able to get this dragon. This will be number 3 now, and they're slowly building themselves up as they're getting cut down. It's an odd way to play.
A couple of AD carries straying too far from the nest there, not staying with their protectors. But it is still as you said, a good fight for Final 5. Prototype got a little crazy at the end, but the catch on Jez's was exactly what they needed.
That's crazy.
They didn't even have position for that Dragon. The fact that they were able to catch Jez's is a huge mistake by Ezreal. That wasn't a steal. He was actually passing it to him. I looked like a steal, though.
Oh!
Yeah.
It did.
That gets me all the
Sivir
time.
on the other side.
It's teamwork,
It's still,
actually.
it was great timing.
It was. It was fantastic timing. Yeah, taking a look at this time, it was Sion coming in from out of nowhere. Ends up catching Jez as an Impaler. Not being able to shift away from a giant flaming Sion is a little bit slow on the reaction time scale, and it ends up costing them the fight right there. Obviously, after they lost him, the front line was able to protect properly, unless you leave the front line, which is why Prototype died.
I was, like I said, they're going to have to face check, and I was going to be like, or Rux is going to have to hit a really good ult, but I'm like, you're going to hear the gong, you're going to shift away. I guess not. He was able to hit everybody on the backside.
You would think all of those things are true.
So they found what they wanted, and that means they can find it again, but it's going to be harder next time. Coast is looking for it. They have the wards they need.
Oh, what a catch.
Rule 18 being solidified once again is that you may die on this one. He actually lives. He negates the rule. It gets negated, and they take down Sheep. Prototype getting in, getting a kill. That's another silver boat block. That's the double kill for Vayne. They're going to be able to get crab control on this one too, but actually they're going for Baron first. What can Jez's do from the outside? Because right now he's just going to be putting in tickle shots, and Prototype wants to be putting him in the coffin. The last nail, is it there? That's the shot, and he gets an extended triple kill as his team takes down Baron. Final 5, making some moves. Mash trying to do what he can here on the second tier turret in mid.
They continue to take control of the game here. That one was actually Coast forcing the issue, but they overcommitted over a wall, and they weren't dealing about the damage dealers.
Yeah.
There's two real threats on this Final 5 team. It is Prototype and it is Gate, and they jump on the Janna, who is a protector in herself, whereas Gate is in the back, and those soldiers do end up hurting. He puts the Emperor's Divide down. They cannot get to them. At the end of the day, they couldn't even finish off Rule 18. But the soldiers did so much damage that by the time Prototype comes in, it's all cleanup. Vayne is the best in those situations. Nunu's able to stop by for the Blood Boil. And then because of the Nunu plus Vayne, the Baron was basically an afterthought. Once again, Jez's gets a little bit too close to Prototype. He needs to be able to land a Mystic Shot before getting into auto attack range. Otherwise, he will die. Just like that. Final 5 in control.
I really confused as to why Coast is giving Final 5 these fights in the jungle. Yeah, they thought they had a catch, but you got to realize you're walking into a Nunu and a Azir, so much ability to create a choke point and make it a deadly area, and they do that every time. There's one hook. Huge minions coming in here. You can see the buff coming in from Baron that Final 5 has. They don't have too many waves to work. It is in their favor in the bottom, but it's going to start pushing the other way. So they start heading top for now. They're going to clear out the jungle, get some necessary wards for the way back in. Breadcrumb wards on the way out, and wards for the engage. Only a 2,000 gold lead after all this. It seems like Final 5 has like taken the game and run with it. But you look at the top of the screen and it says different.
Yeah, but we have to keep in mind 3 Dragon buffs plus the Baron buff. The effective gold that these guys are playing with is, in my opinion, close to a 10,000 gold lead at the moment. Not to mention all the power that is packed into Prototype's Vayne. That's a 388 attack damage, 461 attack damage once he gets the shield from Janna, which is then amplified with his tumble. It's really a tumble-reliant Vayne that needs to space his auto attacks to basically blow people up who don't have armor.
And he's still forgoing the attack.
Yeah, at the moment. I think he's going Last Whisper next if we're going to follow his path. But that's because he's literally just relying on Tumble for a lot of his damage amping abilities. And with the Baron buff, they're just going to keep trying to push these turrets. Impaler wants to get a catch, but it is so hard to get through this team. Whoever he jumps on, Janna shield, Janna ult, Azir ultimate, Nunu snowballs, you just jump into a whole bunch of trouble.
Everybody's got to be able to follow. There's a bit of long-range attack, but like you're saying, everybody's got to be able to follow, and that's one of the deadliest things they could do right now. 3,000 gold lead right now for Final 5. They come out in Game 1 here, the best of 5, quite strong with a new composition that we have not really seen yet. They finally get their Vayne. Shorter Ace picks up the Nunu, and it seems like they're able to put things together from the start of this one. Even for Shorter Ace being very lackadaisical in the jungle and not trying to put too much pressure on Impaler, he's definitely able to make moves first and get Prototype that help he needed.
He was still able to maintain objective control, though, which I think is a very important thing. And there's Rux going real fast.
Hey! Almost gets it! Nope, it's going to be the Spell Shield, actually. Doesn't get the decimating hit either. No stun, no slow. A hook in. Rux is huge, though. Not really the guy you want to be hooking in there. And they are able to stay safe. The wave is quite far from here. They're not going to be getting that anytime soon. Top lane looks like it could be something for them. And middle in just a little bit. But right now it's denying Coast pretty much everything. Suck up the resources in the jungle and just kind of string them along. Really learn how they play. Take this time to figure out what they can do to get inside Coast's head and make next game even maybe that much easier.
Yeah, the team comp is really showing in Final Five's favor as of now. The armor stacking by Rux and Shorter Ace is really exposing a vulnerability that Coast built in here, just having AD damage and not being able to snowball the early game. Additionally, Coast put so much focus on shutting down Prototype because it was so blatantly obvious that Final Five was building around this vein. They're like, we have to shut him down. The fact that their first gank actually ended up getting a kill to Prototype and then the shutdown was unable to reach him thereafter has just been a lot of pain. And there's no vision control now, so Dragon number 4 probably going to Final Five.
It just gets even scarier. So much control over the vision. Gate can just throw soldiers up everywhere and even escape with those soldiers. Love the play of Azir. It's great to watch in game at a high level. Gate's been able to bring a little bit of that this weekend. See now, minion waves pushing a bit back in the favor of Coast, but that's only for a second. We're looking for them to put some wards out here, see if they can get themselves a place to get a pick or an objective in their favor. Because right now it's getting tight.
That's exactly it. Try not hooking the tank, and that's a great start. But it's because the front line is so ever-present right now for Final Five. Coast would need to try some flanking maneuvers. They would need to get more wards up. They need a lot of help, actually. But they basically want Final Five to not be as grouped as they are, since the zone control of Azir plus Nunu, as well as the heal they have built in for Vayne, is too much for Coast to handle in a controlled environment. So Coast would actually need a little bit of chaos and split pushing of all things.
Yeah. All right there, Final Five just kind of giving up their blue. They definitely had the ability to control it, so a bit of a mistake there. Coast walks out freely. Jezz gets it for himself. So Final Five definitely needs to realize there's still a chance for Coast to get back in this one. It may look all green on the other side of the map there in their favor, but it's not anywhere near over, and Coast is definitely a team that will stick it out. I was a little scared yesterday when they did do that surrender. It was a kind of early. Granted, they were down quite a bit of gold, but we saw Final Five stick in that game I was talking about, the 40 kills to 20 kill game. It's not over till it's over. We're going to see right now that Coast is playing that mentality. They're trying to get themselves back in this one. So Final Five's able to grab the blue for themselves, so not too bad that they lost theirs. Gate still gets one. And now they're going to try to put some pressure in this bottom lane. Maybe, nope, going back. Not. A lot of teams are doing this. They take a lot, and then they're going to say, you know what? Hang on.
Well, here's the thing. Final Five is in so much control of this game. They know they have the new objective control. They've proven that they're able to win these team fights time and time again, and they're one dragon away from 5.
That's
Just
true.
Have to restate that again
point.
and again. So even though this has been a very subdued game, fairly low in kills, it's on Coast to try and force things because Final Five has that secondary win condition, which is probably the...
Yeah. Very good point, chat. It's just so close to being there. Once you get the aspect of the dragon, it's almost impossible to fight. You could even have Coast with Baron right now, and you'd still be looking at probably a Final Five win there in the skirmish. Clearing out that Baron, actually, as there is 10 seconds left on it. We have a pink ward still for Final Five down towards the dragon, so they have control over that.
They're trying for something.
That is on the hunt from Sivir, but again, it's just Sion on the front line. Over to the back. Gate gets hit up. Emperor's Divide knocks everybody back, and he uses the Self-Summoner heal. That's one kill. Mashmi goes down. You can see Gate from the outside controlling his soldiers. Now getting a double kill. Doesn't even use Shifting Sands to get in the fight. Just commands them from the outside, and the rest of the team now to control. This is where Shorter Ace comes into play. The rest of the team's adding the slows. An extended triple kill now coming in for Gate on Azir, and it looks like they may be able to solidify another Baron. Maybe they'll take this one to Coast in just a few.
That Azir power getting pretty much 4, maybe even 5. 4. An extended quadra kill right there. His damage is so indiscriminate of who goes on you. So when they dove him as 2 people and they did not finish him off, he just killed both of them.
And it's just line damage too. So if you're standing next to him, you're going to take the damage. If he's getting, another person's getting auto attacked. Fantastic play coming out right now. And you have to remember, Gate and the rest of the team just stole that blue back. If they didn't have it, he probably would not have put out that power in that fight. Yeah. Let's see that one more time.
This was Coast needing to find a fight. And honestly, their initiation was not that bad. They got onto Gate with two people, but Jess's was not able to contribute enough damage. He basically ended up having to dual prototype, which to his credit he was able to do, but when they pick a Warwick alt target against a two-threat team, they need to be able to kill both threats. They were able to get one, they finished off prototype, but they were not able to get Gate. Another catch trying to happen.
One after the other, and they actually get out of that one. It looked like they wanted it. That was the on the hunt, but the Dark Passage quickly to disengage that fight. Coast didn't seem like they exactly wanted it. Maybe not enough vision, but here we're going to have not really a base race, but a base taunt. It looks like they're going for inhibitor turrets on both sides here, Jack.
Yeah, well, against Nunu Azir, I don't think you're winning many base races, especially with the enhanced turret damage. But if you're going to take a chance, because you're down 4 dragons and a Baron, you may as well. But these are Baron minions, a Nunu Azir team, and a Sion. It's not even close, this base race. This is just a base give up.
Oh my gosh, Final 5 choosing the right one. They roll the dice and they get Snake Eyes on it. They're going to come up with game 1, 36 minutes in. Very well fought game against Coast.
Man, yeah, that's one thing that you shouldn't do against Azir Nunu and a team with Baron minions.
It's like, hey, I'm Warwick. I can speed everybody up. Don't worry.
It's like, do that type of base race. It was a completely one-sided base race, but I actually can't fault Coast for thinking of doing it. It's just the starting position of that base race.
That's true.
Was so lopsided that they needed to abandon ship right away. However, they were losing that game in a multitude of fashions. They couldn't team fight. They couldn't control objectives. The 5th dragon was on the way in a minute. They already had Baron. It was over before that base race choice. Just a well-played game by Final 5.
Gate got big. May have to see an Azir ban coming in there. That was very nice for them. And I like the fact that, Jesus was trying to bring out the Ezreal too. They were trying to play that mind game of, we're going to play it, you might have to ban it. But I'm pretty sure Final 5 won that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, hindsight is obviously 2020 when we look at these team comps. Yeah. The first pick, Vayne, drew a lot of attention.
It did.
In-game and even in the pick and ban phase. It didn't even seem to be super impactful. It was really the Azir and, honestly, Rux's Scion that seemed to hold the biggest impact. Gate definitely putting up some fantastic numbers in that game, 5-1-4, but more about his control in the team fights, being able to take on multiple people, and specifically Coast team composition not having enough magic damage. Really hurt them because against double tanks, they couldn't kill.
Too much AD, and again, another team, speaking of Final 5, leaving the Warwick up, not really worrying about it. They said, Coast, you can have it. We'll figure out a way to disengage it or peel you off somebody. And they didn't even have a Morgana for that person. They just did it with good old Monsoon, good old Twisted, or Rux rather, throwing himself into people. And it becomes hard for teams to want to leave that up because everybody thinks it's the end-all if you leave it.
Yeah, it is true that they were one of the few teams to pick Warwick without comboing it with the Morgana. So it was excessively easy to peel and Paler off of fights. That's something Coach is going to have to adapt to.
Yeah, absolutely. See if they can come up big in the second game. This first one obviously looked like they were trying a few things with that Ezreal, with the Sivir pick and whatnot, kind of having the Maokai to drive everything in, on the hunt for Warwick to get Infinite Duress. So they had a composition that you saw happen a few times, right? You'd see Mashme throw on the Sivir ult, and then it was actually a Dark Passage.
It was actually a retreat ult. It's just run away.
So not everybody was on the same page. I think the composition will be a little bit better for them. They weren't really able to kind of create a 30-minute composition stopper. And we did see Prototype get late and be a menace, but you're right. It was Gate. It wasn't Prototype going crazy on his no attack speed Vayne build. Interesting.
Yeah. I don't have any problems with what Final 5 decided to do there. They are the ones that seem to have bounced back the best from losing the 3 games to end the series yesterday and come all the way back, sleep on a little bit, and come out victorious. Because I still look at this Coast team and think that they're more afraid of failure than they are looking to make it into the LCS. There's been so many roster movements, and I think there's a lot of pressure on, not to mention their performance in the rounds leading up to this. They're expected to win, not finish last
place. That's so true. Like we said, from head to toe, top to bottom lane, these guys are LCS players. They know what it's been like. We just talked about Jez's coming off the world stage, so the pressure here is kind of like to get back to that. I know if I had to go back to my job at my grocery store, I'd be like, damn, I wish I was casted right now.
There'd be a lot of pressure on your next cast.
There'd be a lot of pressure on my next cast.
You wouldn't want to mess up your words.
So it is. It definitely plays on the mentality. And it was good to see Final 5 kind of shake their fears off as well. Like I said, when I talked to Shorter Ace before the game, he was very nervous, kind of jittery in even his words and speaking, and didn't know how to answer. You kind of get the smile out of every answer. because they're thinking of what to say and the jitters. He completely broke that. And these guys are young, 17. And I said, when have you been playing since? He's like 7th grade in the beta. So they know how to play the game, but they don't know what this atmosphere is like. And they're actually taking to it quite well.
Yeah, I really can't wait to see what these guys can do if they're able to continue out of the series. But that was game 1. It's now 1-0 for Final 5. And I can't wait to see what happens in game 2.
I'm going to be absolutely excited to see what happens in game 2. Looking forward to it. I don't know. Are we going to commercial right now?
I think we are.
I think we are going to commercial break. So we're actually going to be right back with more NALCS Expansion Tournament. Ribbon Jap, bringing it to you live. We're going to have more in just a second.